The phone rang at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in September, and I knew before I even picked it up that my world was about to collapse. You know that feeling, don't you? When your gut tells you something's wrong before your brain can catch up. I'd been having nightmares for weeks about losing my son Michael, and now here was reality, cruel as a winter morning, about to prove my worst fears right. Mr. Harrison? The voice was clinical, detached. This is Officer Patricia Walsh with the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about your son, Michael Harrison. My hand started shaking before she even finished the sentence. Michael was 32, married to my daughter-in-law Sarah, and they lived just 20 minutes away from me in Oak Park. He worked construction, just like I did for 43 years before my back gave out. Good kid. Responsible. The kind of man who called his old man every Sunday without fail. There's been an accident, sir. I'm very sorry to inform you that your son was killed in a vehicle collision on Interstate 294 approximately 1 hour ago. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I dropped the phone, heard it clatter on my kitchen floor, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world just stopped spinning, and all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like a war drum. But here's the thing that still haunts me to this day, the detail that should have been my first clue that something was terribly, impossibly wrong. As I stood there in my kitchen, paralyzed by grief, I could hear something from upstairs. Snoring. Deep, familiar snoring coming from my guest bedroom. You see, Michael had been staying with me for the past 3 days. He and Sarah were having problems, nothing too serious, just the kind of rough patch most marriages go through. Sarah had asked him to give her some space, so he'd been crashing in my spare room, eating my cooking, and helping me fix the leaky faucet in the basement. And right now, as some police officer was telling me my son was dead, I could hear him sleeping peacefully above my head. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, if you've ever gotten a phone call that turned your life upside down, please hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you is going to challenge everything you think you know about truth, family, and the lengths people will go to destroy the ones they claim to love. And please comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I want to know this story reaches people everywhere, because the evil I discovered could happen to anyone, anywhere. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers. Officer, I think there's been some mistake. My son is here. He's upstairs sleeping in my house right now. There was a pause, the kind of pause that makes your blood run cold. Sir, can you please confirm your son's full name and date of birth? Michael James Harrison. Born March 15, 1991. Look, officer, I understand you're doing your job, but my son is literally 20 feet away from me right now. I can hear him snoring. Another pause. Longer this time. Mr. Harrison, I'm looking at a driver's license right here. Michael James Harrison, same date of birth. The vehicle was registered in his name. Sir, I need you to understand, we have a positive identification. My legs gave out. I slumped against the kitchen counter, my mind racing. How could this be possible? How could my son be dead on some highway while simultaneously sleeping in my guest room? The officer was still talking, something about next of kin and arrangements, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I need to call you back. I managed to whisper, and I hung up. The house was quiet except for that snoring upstairs. I climbed those 14 steps like a man walking to his own execution, each creak of the old wooden stairs echoing in the silence. The guest room door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, I could see a form under the covers, breathing steadily. I pushed the door open. There was Michael, my son, my boy, sleeping peacefully on his side just like he had since he was 5 years old. Same dark hair, same strong jawline he got from his mother, same small scar above his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at age 7. I stood there for what felt like hours, watching him breathe, listening to the steady rhythm that proved he was alive, that proved the phone call had been some horrible mistake. But as I turned to leave, to call the police back and sort out this nightmare of a mix-up, I noticed something that made my blood freeze in my veins. On the nightstand next to the bed was Michael's wallet. I could see it clearly in the dim light from the hallway, the same brown leather wallet I'd bought him for his 18th birthday, worn and familiar. But if Michael was here, sleeping in my house, then whose wallet had the police found in that crashed car? I grabbed my phone and called the police station back, demanding to speak to Officer Walsh again. When she finally came on the line, I was practically shouting. "Officer Walsh, this is David Harrison again. I need you to listen to me very carefully. My son is alive. He's here, in my house, breathing and sleeping. There has been a massive mistake. Sir, I understand this is difficult, but we've confirmed the identification multiple times. The deceased male was carrying identification belonging to Michael James Harrison. We also found his cell phone, his work ID, and several personal items. Then someone stole his identity. Someone was using his name, his cards. Mr. Harrison, the deceased male matches the physical description on the driver's license. Same height, same weight, same identifying marks. I'm going to need you to come to the morgue to make a formal identification." The word morgue hit me like a physical blow. I looked back toward the guest room, where I could still hear that steady, reassuring snoring. My son was alive. I knew he was alive. But someone else, someone who looked like him, who had his identification, was lying dead in some sterile room across the city. I agreed to meet Officer Walsh at the Cook County morgue at 6 a.m. I had 3 hours to figure out what the hell was happening to my family. 3 hours to understand how my son could be simultaneously alive and dead. But first, I needed to wake Michael up. I needed to hold him, to touch him, to prove to myself that he was real. I needed to hear his voice, to see his eyes open, to confirm that whatever nightmare was unfolding around us, my boy was safe. I walked back into the guest room and gently shook his shoulder. "Michael? Son? Wake up. We have a problem." He stirred, rolled over, and opened his eyes. Those familiar green eyes, just like his mother's, looked up at me with confusion and concern. "Dad? What time is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Michael, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The police just called. They said you were killed in a car accident an hour ago." He sat up quickly, suddenly wide awake. "What? Dad, what are you talking about? I've been here all night. I went to bed around 11:30 after we watched the Cubs game." "I know, son. I know. But they have your ID, your wallet, your phone. Someone who looks like you, someone with your identification, is dead. And I need to figure out who's trying to destroy our family." The look that crossed Michael's face in that moment is something I'll never forget. It wasn't just confusion or fear. It was recognition. Like he knew something, like pieces of a puzzle were falling into place in his mind, and he didn't like the picture they were forming. "Dad," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper, "Sarah knows where I keep all my important documents. She has access to everything, my social security card, my passport, spare driver's license, even the backup credit cards I keep in the house." And that's when I realized this wasn't just a case of mistaken identity or stolen documents. This was something much darker, much more personal. Someone had planned this. Someone wanted Michael to appear dead while he was very much alive. Someone was playing a game with our lives, and I was starting to understand that my daughter-in-law Sarah might be at the center of it all. The next 6 hours would reveal a conspiracy so twisted, so carefully planned, that it would shake my faith in everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and love. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I had to go identify a body that couldn't possibly be my son, but somehow carried his entire identity. As Michael and I sat in that guest room at 4 a.m., both of us trying to process the impossible, either of us could have imagined the web of lies, betrayal, and calculated evil that was about to unfold. Neither of us could have predicted how far some people will go to destroy the lives of the people who trust them most. The drive to the Cook County morgue felt like traveling through a fever dream. Michael sat beside me in the passenger seat, both of us wrapped in a silence that felt heavy as lead. The early morning streets of Chicago were empty except for a few delivery trucks and the occasional taxi, their headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness like knives. Every few minutes, I'd glance over at him, just to make sure he was still there, still breathing, still real. Dad, what if… Michael started, then stopped. What if what, son? What if Sarah, what if she's done something terrible? I wanted to reassure him, to tell him that his wife of 6 years would never hurt him, but the words stuck in my throat. The truth was, I never fully trusted Sarah. There was something about her that had always made me uneasy, something calculating behind those bright blue eyes. Michael had been head over heels in love with her since college, but love can blind you to things that everyone else can see clearly. The morgue was a gray, institutional building that looked like it had been designed to drain hope from anyone who entered. Officer Walsh was waiting for us in the lobby, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and the weary expression of someone who delivered too much bad news to too many families. Mr. Harrison, she said, extending her hand. And you must be Michael. She stared at Michael for a long moment, and I could see the confusion working across her face. Sir, I have to say, the resemblance is remarkable. Are you sure you don't have a twin brother? An identical relative? Michael shook his head. I'm an only child. No twins in the family. Officer Walsh, can you tell us more about what was found at the scene? She pulled out a small notebook and flipped through several pages. The deceased was driving a 2018 Honda Civic, license plate number. She rattled off a series of letters and numbers that made Michael's face go white. That's my car, he whispered. Dad, that's my license plate number. Officer Walsh looked between us, clearly struggling to make sense of what she was hearing. Gentlemen, I think we need to see the body before we draw any conclusions. The morgue's viewing room was exactly what you'd expect, sterile, cold, and filled with the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. The attendant wheeled out a gurney covered with a white sheet, and I felt my knees threaten to buckle. Are you ready? The attendant asked. I nodded, though I wasn't ready for anything. I wasn't ready to see a stranger wearing my son's identity. I wasn't ready to confront the reality that someone had planned this elaborate deception. Most of all, I wasn't ready for what I actually saw when that sheet was pulled back. The man on that table looked exactly like Michael. Not similar. Not close. Exactly like him. Same face, same build, same hair, even the same small scar above the left eyebrow. If I hadn't known with absolute certainty that Michael was standing right beside me, I would have sworn I was looking at my son's corpse. Michael grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh like claws. Dad, that's impossible. How is that possible? Officer Walsh was staring between Michael and the body with an expression of pure bewilderment. In 30 years on the force, I've never seen anything like this. Gentlemen, I think we're dealing with something much more complex than a simple case of stolen identity. I forced myself to look closer at the dead man, searching for any detail that might explain this nightmare. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach lurch. On the inside of his left wrist, barely visible unless you knew to look for it, was a small tattoo. 3 letters, SMH. Sarah Michelle Harrison. Michael's wife had those same initials tattooed on her wrist in the exact same place. Michael, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could, show Officer Walsh your left wrist. He rolled up his sleeve without question, revealing clean, unmarked skin. The dead man had a tattoo that Michael didn't have. It was the first concrete difference we'd found, and it opened up questions that made my head spin. Officer Walsh, I said, I need you to run every test you can on this body. Fingerprints, dental records, DNA, everything. Because either this man is the most elaborate imposter in history, or we're dealing with something that shouldn't be possible. She nodded grimly. I've already started the process. The fingerprint results should be back within a few hours. But Mr. Harrison, I need to ask you both some difficult questions. Michael, where exactly were you last night between midnight and 3 a.m.? I was at my dad's house. I went to bed around 11:30, and I didn't leave until he woke me up this morning. Dad was there the whole time. And the car? When's the last time you remember seeing your Honda Civic? Michael's face went pale. I haven't seen it in 3 days. Sarah said she needed to borrow it for some errands while I was staying at Dad's. She said her car was in the shop. Officer Walsh and I exchanged a look that spoke volumes. The pieces were starting to form a picture, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Michael, I need you to call Sarah right now, I said. Tell her about the accident, tell her the police called, but don't mention that you're alive. I want to hear her reaction. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed. I could hear it ringing through the speaker once, twice, 3 times, then straight to voicemail. That's weird, Michael said. Sarah always answers her phone, especially this early. She's an insomniac, she's usually awake. Try the house phone. He dialed again. This time it rang and rang until an automated message picked up. But here's what made my blood run cold. The outgoing message was Sarah's voice, but it sounded wrong. Strained. Like she'd been crying. You've reached the Harrison residence. We can't come to the phone right now due to a family emergency. Please leave a message. Michael stared at his phone like it had turned into a snake. Dad, she recorded that message before the police ever called you. She knew. Somehow, she knew what was going to happen. Officer Walsh was taking notes, furiously. Gentlemen, I think we need to pay Mrs. Harrison a visit. But first, I need you both to understand something. If your suspicions are correct, if this was planned, then we're not just dealing with identity theft. We're looking at conspiracy, fraud, and possibly murder. The man on that table didn't die in an accident. Someone wanted him to die, and they wanted everyone to think it was you, Michael. The implications hit me like a freight train. Someone had found a man who looked exactly like my son, somehow gotten him into Michael's car with Michael's identification, and arranged for him to die in a way that would appear accidental. The level of planning required was staggering. The cold calculation was terrifying. But why? What possible reason could Sarah have for wanting the world to think Michael was dead? Officer Walsh, I said, before we go to the house, there's something else you need to know. Michael and Sarah have been having marital problems. She asked him to move out temporarily. But here's what doesn't make sense. If she wanted him gone, why fake his death? Why not just divorce him? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. The life insurance policy. What? Dad, we took out $1 million life insurance policy 2 years ago. Sarah insisted on it. She said it was responsible planning, that we needed to protect each other. But the policy, it only pays out if the death is accidental or natural. Not suicide, not murder. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Sarah hadn't just wanted Michael gone, she'd wanted him dead, and she'd wanted to collect $1 million for his death. But something had gone wrong. Maybe the man she'd found to take Michael's place had backed out at the last minute. Maybe she'd lost her nerve. Or maybe she'd simply made a mistake that kept Michael safe at my house while her plan unfolded without him. We need to get to that house, I said. We need to confront Sarah before she realizes her plan failed. But as we left the morgue and headed toward Oak Park, none of us could have predicted what we'd find when we arrived. None of us were prepared for the scene that was waiting for us, or for the revelation that would turn this story from a tale of greed and betrayal into something much darker. Because Sarah wasn't the only one involved in this conspiracy. And the man lying dead in that morgue wasn't just a random stranger who happened to look like Michael. He was someone whose connection to our family ran deeper than any of us had imagined. The drive to Michael and Sarah's house in Oak Park should have taken 20 minutes, but it felt like 20 hours. Every traffic light seemed to last forever, every turn brought us closer to answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear. Michael sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, and I could see him aging years and minutes as the reality of his situation sank in. Dad, he said finally, what if she's already gone? What if she knew her plan failed and she ran? Then we'll find her, I replied, though I had no idea how. People like Sarah, people who plan elaborate schemes like this, they always make mistakes. Always. Officer Walsh followed us in her patrol car, and I felt a strange comfort knowing she was there. This was no longer just a family matter. This was attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. This was the kind of evil that required the full weight of the law to address. When we turned onto Maple Street, Michael's neighborhood looked exactly the same as it had 3 days ago when I'd helped him load a bag of clothes into my car. Neat lawns, well-maintained houses, the kind of suburban paradise that was supposed to be safe from the darkness that was currently consuming our lives. But there was something wrong with the Harrison house as soon as we pulled into the driveway. All the curtains were drawn, which was unusual for Sarah, who loved natural light. Michael's Honda Civic was nowhere to be seen, of course, but Sarah's white Toyota Camry was parked in the garage with the door open. "That's weird," Michael said. "Sarah always closes the garage door. Always. She's obsessive about it." We parked and waited for Officer Walsh to join us before approaching the front door. The silence around the house felt unnatural, like even the birds had sensed something was wrong and decided to find somewhere else to sing. Michael used his key to unlock the front door, and the first thing that hit us was the smell. Not the usual scent of Sarah's vanilla candles or the lavender air freshener she loved. This was something else. Something metallic and wrong. "Sarah?" Michael called out. "Sarah, are you home?" No answer. We moved through the living room, and I could see signs of disturbance everywhere once I knew what to look for. Books pulled from shelves, drawers left partially open, papers scattered across the coffee table. It looked like someone had been searching for something, or packing in a hurry. That's when Officer Walsh grabbed my arm and nodded toward the kitchen. On the kitchen table, spread out like evidence at a crime scene, were documents. Insurance papers, bank statements, and what looked like correspondence with someone named Marcus Chin. But it was the photograph lying in the center that made Michael collapse into the nearest chair. It was a picture of the dead man from the morgue. Not a driver's license photo, not a formal portrait, but a casual snapshot of him sitting at what appeared to be this very kitchen table, smiling at the camera, with Sarah's arm around his shoulder. "Oh God," Michael whispered. "Oh God, Dad, she was seeing him. That man, whoever he is, Sarah was having an affair with him." Officer Walsh picked up one of the letters with latex gloves she'd pulled from her jacket. "This is correspondence between Sarah Harrison and someone named Marcus Chin regarding what appears to be a business arrangement. Listen to this, Marcus, the plan needs to happen exactly as we discussed. The timing is crucial. Michael will be at his father's house, so the substitution needs to occur between midnight and 2 a.m. Remember, you need to be wearing his watch, his wedding ring, everything we discussed. The insurance investigators will look for inconsistencies." The words hit me like physical blows. This Marcus Chin, this man who looked exactly like my son, had been Sarah's co-conspirator. But something had gone wrong. Instead of a carefully planned fake accident where Marcus would survive and they'd collect the insurance money together, Marcus was dead. Really dead. "There's more," Officer Walsh continued, reading from another document. "The brake lines on the Honda have been compromised as we discussed. The accident will occur on the curved section of I-294 where the guardrails are weakest. Emergency response time to that location averages 12 minutes, plenty of time for you to be extracted safely and for us to proceed with the plan." Michael stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "She tried to kill him too. She tried to kill both of us. Dad, she sabotaged the brakes intending for Marcus to survive the crash, but something went wrong." I was trying to process the implications when we heard a sound from upstairs. A soft thump, like someone dropping a book. We all froze, staring at the ceiling. Officer Walsh drew her weapon and motioned for us to stay back. "Mrs. Harrison? This is the Chicago Police Department. If you're in the house, please come downstairs with your hands visible." Another thump, then the sound of footsteps moving across the floor above us. "I'm going up," Officer Walsh said. "You two stay here and don't touch anything." But Michael was already moving toward the stairs. "If Sarah's up there, if she's hurt or... I need to see." I followed him, ignoring Officer Walsh's protests. The stairs creaked under our weight as we climbed toward whatever was waiting for us on the second floor. The master bedroom door was closed, but light was visible underneath. Michael reached for the handle, and I grabbed his wrist. Son, whatever we find in there, you need to be prepared. People capable of planning what Sarah planned are capable of anything. He nodded grimly and pushed open the door. Sarah was there, sitting on the edge of the bed with her back to us, perfectly still. She was dressed in black, as if she'd been preparing for a funeral, and spread around her on the bed were more photographs, more documents, and what appeared to be several passports. Sarah? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. She turned around slowly, and the woman who faced us was not the Sarah Harrison I'd known for 6 years. This woman's face was haggard, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and there was something in her expression that was absolutely terrifying. Not guilt or remorse, but fury. You were supposed to be dead, she said to Michael, her voice flat and emotionless. You were supposed to be in that car. Marcus was only supposed to get hurt, not killed. You ruined everything. Officer Walsh appeared behind us, weapon drawn but lowered. Mrs. Harrison, I need you to put your hands where I can see them. Sarah laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. Officer, you have no idea what you've walked into. You think this is about insurance money? You think this is about some simple murder plot? She stood up and moved to the window, and for the first time, I could see what was spread across the bed clearly. There weren't just documents and photographs. There were multiple driver's licenses, all with Michael's name but different addresses. There were bank account statements from banks I'd never heard of. And there were photographs of at least 6 different men, all of whom bore a striking resemblance to my son. Sarah, what is this? Michael asked, his voice shaking. This, my dear husband, is a business. A very profitable business that you were about to ruin by being such a good, faithful, boring husband. She picked up one of the photographs, a picture of a man who could have been Michael's twin, and held it up for us to see. Do you know how much a man who looks exactly like you is worth, Michael? Do you know how much certain people will pay for someone who can assume your identity completely? The pieces were falling into place in my mind, forming a picture so horrific I could barely process it. Sarah hadn't just been planning to fake Michael's death for insurance money. She'd been running some kind of identity theft operation, finding men who looked like Michael and using them to commit fraud, theft, or worse. Marcus was supposed to be the last one, she continued. One final job, collect the life insurance, and then we'd disappear. But Marcus got greedy. He wanted more money, threatened to expose everything. So I had to modify the plan. Officer Walsh was speaking into her radio, calling for backup, but I could barely hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat. Sarah, how many others have there been? She smiled then, and it was the most chilling expression I'd ever seen on a human face. Enough to make us very wealthy. Michael's face, Michael's build, Michael's innocent, trustworthy appearance. Do you have any idea how valuable those things are in the right market? Michael slumped against the doorframe. You've been using my identity for years. All those times you said you needed my documents for taxes, for insurance, for official paperwork, you were making copies. You were selling my life to criminals. And you never suspected a thing, Sarah said. Dear, sweet, trusting Michael. You made it so easy. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. On the nightstand next to the bed was a small vial of clear liquid and a syringe. Sarah saw me looking at it, and her smile widened. Don't worry, David. That wasn't for Michael. That was for me. When this all went wrong, when Marcus died instead of surviving like he was supposed to, I knew it was over. I've been sitting here for hours, trying to decide whether to run or end it all. Officer Walsh stepped forward. Mrs. Harrison, I need you to step away from that nightstand and put your hands behind your back. But Sarah was faster than any of us expected. She lunged for the vial, grabbed it, and before anyone could stop her, she'd injected the contents into her arm. The next few minutes were chaos. Officer Walsh was calling for paramedics, Michael was screaming Sarah's name, and I was standing there watching a woman I'd known for 6 years collapse to the floor, convulsing. But even as the poison worked through her system, even as her life ebbed away in front of us, Sarah managed to whisper one final revelation that would haunt me forever. The man in the morgue, he wasn't just Marcus Chin. He was Michael's twin brother David. The brother you gave up for adoption 33 years ago. The brother you never told Michael about. She died with those words on her lips, leaving us with a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about my own life, my own choices, and the family I thought I'd protected. Sarah's body lay still on the bedroom floor, but her final words echoed in my mind like a scream that wouldn't end. Michael was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, not confusion, but a deep, devastating betrayal that cut me deeper than any knife ever could. "Dad," he said, his voice hollow. "Dad, is it true? Do I have a twin brother? Did you give away my brother?" The paramedics had arrived and were working on Sarah, though we all knew it was too late. Officer Walsh was coordinating with the detective unit, photographing evidence, treating the bedroom like the crime scene it had become. But all I could focus on was my son's face, the way he was looking at me like he'd never seen me before. "Michael, is it true?" The question hung in the air between us like a guillotine blade. 33 years of buried secrets, 33 years of telling myself I'd made the right choice, and now it was all coming undone in the worst possible way. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, it's true." He sat down heavily on the hallway floor, his back against the wall, and put his head in his hands. "How could you never tell me? How could you let me live my entire life not knowing I had a brother?" I sat down next to him, feeling every one of my 62 years in my bones. "Michael, you have to understand, it was different then. Your mother and we were barely 19 when she got pregnant. We weren't married, we had no money, and when the ultrasound showed twins..." The memories came flooding back, painful and sharp after all these years. Rebecca, Michael's mother, crying in the doctor's office when we learned we were having twins. Both of us terrified, both of us broke, both of us knowing we could barely handle one baby, let alone two. "The adoption agency said they had a family who specifically wanted twins," I continued. "They said the boys would be raised together, that they'd know they were adopted, that they'd have good lives. We were going to give up both of you, but at the last minute, you kept me and gave him away. Your mother went into early labor. You were born first, 20 minutes before your brother. When the nurse put you in my arms, I looked into your eyes, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't give you up. But by then, the adoption papers for your brother were already signed. The family was there, waiting. They said it would be cruel to change our minds, that they'd already bonded with the idea of having him." Michael was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. "What was his name? My brother, what was his name? We named you both before the adoption. You were Michael James, and he was Marcus James. The family who adopted him, the Chens, they kept Marcus as his first name." The irony was devastating. For 33 years, Marcus Chin had been living his life, not knowing he had a twin brother. And somehow, through Sarah's web of lies and criminal connections, he'd found his way back to Michael, only to die wearing Michael's identity, in Michael's car, carrying Michael's documents. Officer Walsh approached us carefully. "Gentlemen, I hate to interrupt, but we've found something else you need to see." She led us back into the bedroom, where the evidence team was cataloging Sarah's documents. On the dresser they'd found a journal, leather-bound and filled with Sarah's careful handwriting. "It's all here," Officer Walsh said. "The entire plan, going back almost 2 years. She'd been researching your family, David. She knew about the adoption, knew about Marcus Chin, knew exactly where to find him." She opened the journal to a page marked with evidence tape. "Listen to this. Found him working construction in Milwaukee, just like his twin. Unmarried, no close family ties, perfect for the operation. The physical resemblance is remarkable. Even their own father wouldn't be able to tell them apart in photographs. Marcus is desperate for money, struggling with gambling debts. He'll be easy to manipulate." My hands were shaking as I absorbed the implications. "She tracked down my other son, the son I gave up, and she recruited him into this scheme. She used his desperation, his financial problems, to turn him into a criminal. There's more," Officer Walsh said, turning to another page. She'd been grooming Marcus for months, teaching him Michael's mannerisms, Michael's history, having him practice being Michael. The plan was much more elaborate than just insurance fraud. She was going to have Marcus assume Michael's identity permanently while Michael disappeared, probably murdered. Michael looked up from the floor. She was going to kill me and replace me with my own twin brother. But something went wrong, I said, trying to piece together the timeline. Marcus was supposed to survive the car crash, but he didn't. The plan fell apart. Officer Walsh nodded. We found text messages between Sarah and Marcus from the night of the accident. Marcus was having second thoughts. He'd learned more about Michael, learned about you, David, and he was starting to feel guilty about the deception. He threatened to back out. She showed us Sarah's phone, displaying the last exchange of messages. Marcus, I can't do this anymore. He's my brother. I can't take his life. Sarah, it's too late to back out now. Everything is already in motion. Marcus, I'm going to tell him the truth. I'm going to tell Michael who I am. Sarah, if you do that, you'll ruin everything. And I'll make sure you pay for it. Marcus, I'm done. Find someone else. The final message was from Sarah, sent at 1:47 a.m. The brakes on the Honda have been adjusted. There's no backing out now. Michael was reading over my shoulder, and I could feel him shaking. She killed him, Dad. She killed my brother because he grew a conscience. She killed him because he wanted to do the right thing. The full horror of the situation was becoming clear. Marcus Chin, my son, the brother Michael never knew he had died trying to protect the brother he never met. In his final hours, he discovered the truth about family, about loyalty, about the bonds that tie us together even when we don't know they exist. Officer Walsh, I said, my voice barely steady, I need to know everything about Marcus's life. I need to know what kind of man he was, what kind of life he lived. I owe him that much. She nodded sympathetically. We're already working with Milwaukee PD to gather information. But David, there's something else you need to know. In Marcus's apartment, we found evidence that he'd been researching your family for months before Sarah ever contacted him. He knew he was adopted, and he'd been looking for his biological family. The weight of that revelation nearly crushed me. While I'd been living my life, convinced that I'd made the right choice 33 years ago, my other son had been searching for us. He'd been looking for his twin brother, looking for his father, trying to fill the hole that our decision had left in his life. He would have found us eventually, Michael said quietly. Even without Sarah's scheme, he would have found us. Yes, Officer Walsh confirmed. He had already identified Michael through social media, had been following his life from a distance. Sarah's criminal network just gave him an excuse to make contact, even if it was under false pretenses. I thought about all the Sunday phone calls Michael and I shared, all the family dinners Marcus would never attend, all the birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments that had been stolen from us by a decision I made when I was too young and scared to understand the consequences. I want to see him again, I said. I want to see my son again, and I want to tell him I'm sorry. I want to tell him that giving him up was the biggest mistake of my life. The drive back to the morgue was different this time. The sun was rising over Chicago, casting long shadows across the city, and the world looked both exactly the same and completely transformed. Michael sat beside me in silence, processing the reality that he'd had a brother his entire life, that his twin had died trying to protect him from a woman who was supposed to love him. When we arrived at the morgue, I asked for a moment alone with Marcus. The attendant pulled back the sheet, and this time, I looked at him not as a stranger wearing my son's identity, but as my son. My boy. The child I'd given away because I was too scared and too poor to believe I could raise two children. Marcus, I whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, son. I studied his face, looking for the differences I'd missed before. There were subtle variations. His nose was slightly more narrow than Michael's, his chin a bit more pointed. These were the features that would have developed over 33 years of different experiences, different nutrition, different life circumstances. But the fundamental structure was identical. They were unmistakably brothers. Michael joined me after a few minutes, and together we stood over the body of the brother he'd never known. "What do you think he was like?" Michael asked. "Strong," I said, thinking about Officer Walsh's description of Marcus's final text messages. "Brave. He could have gone through with Sarah's plan, could have taken your life and lived comfortably on the insurance money. But when it came down to it, he chose family. He chose you, even though he'd never really known you." "I want to plan his funeral," Michael said. "I want to give him the burial he deserves as a Harrison. I want the world to know that Marcus Chin was also Marcus James Harrison, and that he died protecting his family." Officer Walsh had been waiting patiently in the hallway, and when we emerged from the viewing room, she had more information for us. "We've been in touch with Milwaukee PD and the Chin family who adopted Marcus," she said. "They're devastated by the news, but they want you to know that Marcus was a good man. He struggled with gambling addiction and some financial problems, but he was trying to get his life together. He'd been attending support group meetings, working steadily, trying to build a future for himself." "What about Sarah's criminal network?" I asked. "Were there others involved in this identity theft operation?" "We're investigating several leads. It appears Sarah was part of a larger organization that specialized in identity theft and fraud. Marcus wasn't the first person she'd recruited, and Michael wasn't the first victim. We've identified at least 4 other cases where she used similar methods to exploit men who looked like specific targets." The scope of Sarah's crimes was staggering. She hadn't just betrayed Michael, she'd been running a sophisticated criminal enterprise, destroying lives and families for profit. And somehow, through the cruel mathematics of fate, she'd chosen my family as her final target. "There's one more thing," Officer Walsh said, hesitating. "In Sarah's journal, she wrote about why she chose Michael specifically. It wasn't random. She'd been researching men who fit a certain profile: stable income, substantial life insurance, and what she called exploitable family secrets. She knew about the adoption before she ever married Michael. She targeted him specifically because of what happened 33 years ago. The implications hit me like a physical blow. My decision to give up Marcus for adoption hadn't just affected him, it had made Michael a target. The secret I'd kept to protect my family had ultimately made them vulnerable to someone who specialized in exploiting exactly those kinds of hidden truths. "This is my fault," I said. "All of it. If I'd told Michael about his brother, if I'd been honest about the adoption, Sarah never could have used it against us." "Dad, no," Michael said firmly. "This is not your fault. Sarah made these choices. Sarah decided to hurt people for money. Sarah killed my brother. You made the best decision you could with the information you had 33 years ago." But I wasn't convinced. As we left the morgue and began the process of planning Marcus's funeral, as we started the long journey of healing our family and seeking justice for Sarah's crimes, I carried the weight of wondering how many tragedies could have been avoided if I'd been brave enough to tell the truth from the beginning. The story was far from over. Sarah's death had closed one chapter, but it had opened others. There were criminal associates to track down, victims to identify, and a lifetime of missed opportunities with Marcus to mourn. But most importantly, there was a family to rebuild, a family that now included the memory of a son and brother who had died protecting people he barely knew, simply because love and loyalty were stronger than fear and greed. 3 weeks after Sarah's death, I was sitting in Detective Maria Santos's office, staring at a whiteboard covered with photographs, names, and red string connecting various points like a spider web of crime. The investigation into Sarah's identity theft network had exploded into something much larger than anyone had anticipated. "David," Detective Santos said, "I need you to prepare yourself for what I'm about to show you. We've uncovered evidence that Sarah's operation was far more extensive than we initially believed." She pulled out a thick file folder and spread its contents across her desk. There were dozens of photographs of men who bore varying degrees of resemblance to Michael, along with corresponding fake identification documents, bank records, and what appeared to be client lists. We've identified 17 victims over the past 4 years. She continued. Men who were targeted because they matched specific physical profiles requested by Sarah's clients. These weren't random crimes of opportunity, these were custom jobs. I picked up one of the photographs, a picture of a young man who could have been Michael's cousin. Attached to it was a police report dated 6 months earlier. Missing person, I read aloud. Thomas Bradley, age 29, disappeared from his apartment in Detroit. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. Thomas Bradley's identity was used in a series of bank frauds totaling over $200,000. Detective Santos explained. The perpetrator bore such a strong resemblance to Bradley that he was able to pass himself off as the victim even to people who knew Bradley personally. Where is Thomas Bradley now? We don't know. He's one of 7 men who simply vanished after Sarah's organization finished using their identities. We suspect they were murdered to prevent them from exposing the operation. The full scope of Sarah's evil was becoming clear, and it made me physically sick. She hadn't just been stealing identities, she'd been trafficking in human lives, treating people like disposable commodities to be used and discarded as needed. Detective Santos, what about Michael? If Sarah was able to find Marcus, if she knew about the adoption, what other information did she have about our family? She opened another folder, this one labeled with Michael's name. We've been analyzing Sarah's computer files, and the extent of her surveillance on your family is disturbing. She had been monitoring Michael's movements for over 2 years before they were married. She knew his work schedule, his friends, his financial situation, even his relationship history. She stalked him. Extensively. And David, she wasn't working alone in this. We've identified at least 3 other individuals who were part of her core team. There's Marcus's former handler, a woman named Elena Vasquez who specialized in training the lookalikes. There's a document forger named Jimmy Kim who created all the fake identification. And there's someone they called the broker. We believe this person was the one actually purchasing the identities for criminal use. The idea that there were more people out there, people who had profited from my family's pain, filled me with a rage I'd never experienced before. Have you arrested any of them? We're working on it. Elena Vasquez disappeared the same day Sarah died, someone tipped her off. Jimmy Kim is in custody, but he's not talking. And the broker is still completely unknown to us. We only know about him from references in Sarah's journals. Detective Santos pulled out another document, this one handwritten in Sarah's distinctive script. This is from Sarah's journal, dated 3 months ago. Listen to this. The broker has requested another Michael type for a high-value contract. The client is willing to pay $500,000 for a perfect match, but the resemblance must be exact and the subject must be willing to undergo permanent identity replacement. David, I think Sarah was planning to sell Michael to someone who would have made him disappear forever. Permanent identity replacement? We believe it means the victim would be forced to become someone else entirely, probably to serve as a fall guy for major crimes. The real Michael Harrison would cease to exist, and someone else would live his life while Michael spent years in prison for crimes he never committed. I felt like I was drowning in the horror of it all. Sarah hadn't just wanted Michael dead for insurance money, she'd been planning to sell him into a kind of slavery, to destroy his identity so completely that he would have been better off dead. There's more, Detective Santos said. We've been investigating the Chin family who adopted Marcus, and we found some disturbing connections. Elena Vasquez, the handler I mentioned, she worked for the adoption agency that placed Marcus 33 years ago. The room seemed to spin around me. What are you saying? We think the adoption itself might have been part of a long-term plan. Elena Vasquez has been working in various capacities within the identity theft world for decades. She may have been keeping track of twins who were separated at birth, maintaining records for future use. The implications were staggering. Are you telling me that my decision to give up Marcus for adoption was manipulated? That someone planned this 33 years ago? We're still investigating, but the coincidences are mounting. The Chin family who adopted Marcus were clients of an agency where Elena Vasquez worked. Marcus grew up knowing he was adopted and knowing he had a twin brother, but he was given false information about your identity. He spent years looking for you in the wrong places. I thought about all the what-ifs, all the moments over the past 33 years when Marcus might have found us if he'd had accurate information. All the family gatherings he'd missed, all the conversations Michael and I had shared that could have included him, all the love that had been stolen from us by people who saw human connections as nothing more than opportunities for profit. Detective Santos, I want to help you catch these people. All of them. I want to make sure no other family goes through what we've been through. She nodded grimly. I was hoping you'd say that. Because we have a plan, but it's going to require both you and Michael to put yourselves at risk. She explained that they'd been monitoring communications from Elena Vasquez and the broker, who were apparently unaware that Sarah's operation had been exposed. They were still trying to complete the high-value contract involving the Michael type, and they believed Sarah was simply delayed in delivering. We want to set up a sting operation, Detective Santos said. Michael would pose as one of Sarah's recruits, and we'd arrange a meeting with the broker. It's dangerous, but it might be our only chance to bring down the entire network. Absolutely not, I said immediately. I've already lost one son to these people. I'm not putting Michael in danger. Dad? Michael's voice came from behind me. I turned to see him standing in the doorway of Detective Santos's office. He'd been sitting in the waiting room, but apparently he'd been listening to our conversation. Michael, how much did you hear? Enough to know that there are people out there still using my brother's death to hurt other families. Enough to know that if we don't stop them, they'll just find another family to destroy. He walked into the office and sat down beside me. Dad, Marcus died trying to protect me from people he didn't even know were criminals. He sacrificed his life because he discovered that family matters more than money. How can I honor his memory by hiding while these people continue to hurt others? Detective Santos looked between us. Michael, I need you to understand the risks. If this operation goes wrong, if the broker suspects you're working with law enforcement, you could end up like the other missing victims. You could disappear forever. Then we'd better make sure the operation doesn't go wrong, Michael said firmly. Detective Santos, what do you need me to do? Over the next hour, she outlined a plan that was both elegant and terrifying. Michael would make contact with Elena Vasquez, claiming to be a desperate construction worker who needed money and was willing to participate in identity theft. They'd set up a series of meetings, each one monitored and recorded by undercover officers, gradually working their way up the chain to the broker. The key is patience, Detective Santos explained. These people are careful, paranoid. They'll test you multiple times before they trust you with anything significant. You'll need to be convincing not just as someone willing to commit crimes, but as someone desperate enough to risk everything. What about me? I asked. What's my role in this? You're going to be Michael's motivation. The story will be that Michael's father is dying of cancer, needs expensive treatment, and the insurance won't cover it. It's a believable scenario that explains why a previously law-abiding person would suddenly turn to crime. I didn't like the idea of using a fake cancer diagnosis, even as part of a sting operation, but I understood the logic. Desperation makes people do things they never imagined possible, and Sarah's network specialized in exploiting exactly that kind of desperation. When do we start? Michael asked. Tomorrow, Detective Santos said. We've already set up the first contact. Elena Vasquez thinks she's recruiting another victim, but instead, she's about to help us bring down everything she and Sarah built. As we left the police station that afternoon, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something much more dangerous than any of us realized. Sarah's network had been operating for years, had destroyed dozens of lives, and had resources and connections we were only beginning to understand. But I also knew that Michael was right. We couldn't let Marcus's death be meaningless. We couldn't let other families suffer the way we had suffered. And we couldn't let the people who had profited from our pain continue their evil work. The next phase of our story was about to begin, and this time, we weren't going to be victims. This time, we were going to be the hunters. The first meeting with Elena Vasquez took place in a coffee shop on North Michigan Avenue, one of those generic chain places where no one pays attention to the conversations happening at other tables. Michael had spent the morning practicing his story, rehearsing the desperation that would make him believable as someone willing to sell his soul for money. I sat 3 tables away, nursing a cup of coffee and pretending to read a newspaper while Detective Santos and her team monitored the conversation through a wire Michael wore under his jacket. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper steady. Elena Vasquez was not what I'd expected. Instead of the hardened criminal I'd imagined, she appeared to be an ordinary woman in her 50s, well-dressed and soft-spoken, the kind of person you'd trust to watch your children. But there was something cold in her eyes, something calculating that reminded me of Sarah's final expression before she injected herself with poison. "You're Michael," she said, sitting across from him at a small table near the window. "Sarah told me good things about you before she had her accident." "Yeah, well, Sarah's gone, and I'm still here with bills to pay," Michael replied, sticking to the script we'd rehearsed. "She said you might have work for someone who looks like me." Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The work pays well, but it requires complete commitment. And complete discretion. Are you prepared for that?" "My dad's medical bills are piling up," Michael said, and I was impressed by how genuine his desperation sounded. "The insurance company is fighting every treatment. I need money, and I need it fast." "What kind of treatment?" "Lung cancer. He worked construction his whole life, all that dust and asbestos. Now it's killing him, and the doctors say there's an experimental treatment that might help, but it costs more than I make in 2 years. Elena nodded sympathetically, but I could see her making mental calculations. "And you're willing to do whatever it takes to save him?" "Whatever it takes." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "There's $2,000 cash in here. Consider it a signing bonus. But Michael, once you take this money, there's no backing out. My clients don't tolerate people who change their minds. What happened to the last guy who worked with Sarah? The one who looked like me? Marcus?" Elena's expression hardened. "Marcus developed a conscience at exactly the wrong moment. That's a luxury you can't afford in this business." Michael took the envelope without hesitation. "What do you need me to do?" "For now, nothing. Go home, take care of your father, and wait for my call. When the time comes, you'll need to be ready to travel, possibly for several weeks. You'll be living someone else's life completely during that time." "Living someone else's life?" "You'll be given complete documentation for a new identity. Social security number, driver's license, credit cards, employment history, everything. You'll need to study this identity until you can pass for this person even to people who know him well." "And then what?" Elena stood to leave. "And then you'll do what that person needs to do, and my client will pay you very well for the service. Don't call me, don't try to contact me. I'll reach out when we're ready for the next step." After she left, Michael sat at the table for another 10 minutes, maintaining the pretense that this was just a casual coffee meeting. When he finally joined me outside, his hands were shaking. "Dad, did you hear all of that?" I nodded. Detective Santos had been monitoring everything through our earpieces. "You did great, son. But Elena's right about one thing, there's no backing out now. She's going to be watching you, testing you. Any sign that you're not legitimate, and you could end up like Marcus." Over the next 2 weeks, we lived the lie we'd created. I started going to a cancer treatment center downtown, not for actual treatment, but to establish a pattern that Elena's people could verify if they were watching us. Michael made a show of researching experimental treatments, calling insurance companies, and acting like a man desperate to save his dying father. The second contact came exactly 14 days after the first meeting. This time, it was a text message to Michael's phone. "Your father's situation is urgent now. Meet me at Millennium Park, Crown Fountain, 3 p.m. today. Come alone." Crown Fountain was perfect for surveillance, open enough that Detective Santos's team could watch from multiple angles, but crowded enough that Michael wouldn't stand out. I positioned myself on a bench about 50 yards away, pretending to feed pigeons while actually watching every person who approached my son. Elena arrived precisely on time, but she wasn't alone. A young man who looked remarkably like Michael accompanied her, and my blood ran cold when I realized what I was seeing. This was another recruit, another victim being groomed for identity theft. "Michael, I want you to meet David," Elena said, introducing the young man. "David's been working with us for about 6 months now. He's going to tell you what the job is really like." David looked nervous, scared even, and when he spoke, his voice shook slightly. "The money is good, really good. But you have to be prepared to give up everything for a while. Your name, your life, your connections to everyone you care about." "How long?" "Depends on the job. My first assignment lasted 3 months. I had to become someone named Robertson, live in his apartment, work at his job, even date his girlfriend. The whole time, I had to act exactly like him, talk like him, even laugh like him." My stomach dropped. Robertson. Another member of the Chin family, possibly related to Marcus. Elena wasn't just exploiting random resemblances, she was systematically targeting families, using adoption records and family connections to find people who could replace each other. "What happened to the real Robert Chin?" Michael asked. David's face went pale. "I don't know. Elena said he was relocated. That he was starting a new life somewhere else. But I never saw him again, and his family thinks he just disappeared." Elena was studying Michael's reaction carefully. "The clients pay premium prices for complete identity replacement. They need people who can step into someone else's life seamlessly, with no questions asked. It's not easy work, but it's the most profitable service we offer. And if I say yes? Then you'll receive your first assignment within the week. You'll be given a complete dossier on your target, including personal history, mannerisms, relationships, everything you need to become that person. You'll have 72 hours to study the material, and then you'll begin living that person's life." Michael was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with the horror of what he was hearing. These people weren't just stealing identities. They were stealing entire lives, replacing people with lookalikes who could commit crimes, destroy relationships, and ruin reputations while the real victims either disappeared or were murdered. "How much money are we talking about?" he finally asked. Elena smiled. "For a complete identity replacement lasting 6 months, $250,000. Plus bonuses based on the specific tasks you're asked to perform." "What kind of tasks?" "That depends on the client. Sometimes it's simple fraud, draining bank accounts, taking out loans, destroying credit ratings. Sometimes it's more complex, committing crimes that the original person will be blamed for, or gaining access to information that the client wants." "And sometimes?" Elena's smile turned cold. "Sometimes the client wants the original person to disappear permanently, and they need someone who can step into that life seamlessly so no one asks questions about where they went." Michael nodded slowly, as if he was seriously considering the offer. "I need to think about this." "You have 24 hours, Elena said. "After that, the opportunity goes to someone else." As they prepared to leave, Elena turned back to Michael one more time. "Oh, and Michael? Don't try to research us or investigate what we do. We have ways of monitoring that kind of activity, and people who ask too many questions tend to have accidents." After they left, Michael and I met Detective Santos at a safe house on the south side of Chicago. The recordings from the meeting were being analyzed, but we already had enough evidence to arrest Elena for conspiracy and fraud. "We can't arrest her yet," Detective Santos explained. "If we move too soon, we'll lose our chance to get the broker and the rest of the network." "But Michael, what you heard today, these people are responsible for dozens of disappearances. They're not just running identity theft schemes, they're running a human trafficking operation. What's our next move?" I asked. "Michael agrees to take the job, and we follow it all the way to the broker. But I need you both to understand something. Once Michael accepts this assignment, he's going to be completely on his own. We won't be able to monitor him closely without risking exposure. He'll be walking into a situation where one mistake could cost him his life." Michael looked at me, And I saw Marcus in his eyes. The same determination, the same willingness to sacrifice for family. Dad, we have to finish this. For Marcus, for all the people they've hurt, for all the families they're going to destroy if we don't stop them. I knew he was right, but that didn't make it any easier to watch my remaining son walk into the same kind of danger that had killed his twin brother. Michael's phone rang at 6 a.m. the next morning with Elena's cold, businesslike voice delivering instructions that would change everything. The client has accepted you for the assignment. Be at Union Station, Track 7, at 2 p.m. today. Bring one small bag with basic clothing, nothing personal, nothing that can be traced back to your real identity. Someone will meet you there with your new documentation and assignment details. That was it. No goodbye, no additional instructions, just a dial tone and a terrifying realization that my son was about to disappear into a criminal underworld that had already claimed his twin brother's life. Detective Santos had prepared us for this moment, but the reality of it felt like watching Michael walk into a fire. The police surveillance would be minimal and distant. Too much monitoring would expose the operation, but too little could get Michael killed. I'll be wearing a tracking device, Michael reminded me as we sat in my kitchen, drinking what might be our last cup of coffee together for months. They'll know where I am at all times. Michael, these people killed Marcus when he tried to back out. They've made dozens of people disappear. Promise me that if things go wrong, if you're in real danger, you'll find a way to contact the police. Dad, I promise. But you have to promise me something too. If something happens to me, if this goes wrong, you make sure Detective Santos doesn't stop investigating until they've caught everyone involved in this network. The train station was crowded with afternoon commuters, tourists, and the usual mix of people that made Union Station one of the busiest places in Chicago. Michael blended in perfectly, just another guy with a duffel bag, waiting for a train to take him somewhere new. I watched from the upper level, position where I could see Track 7 but far enough away that I wouldn't be noticed. Detective Santos's team was scattered throughout the station, pretending to be travelers, maintenance workers, and security personnel. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman approached Michael at Track 7. She was young, maybe 25, with short dark hair and the kind of nondescript appearance that would be forgotten 5 minutes after you saw her. They spoke briefly, she handed him an envelope, and then she disappeared into the crowd before any of us could follow her. Michael opened the envelope, read its contents, and his face went white. He looked around the station as if searching for something or someone, then walked quickly toward the south exit. My earpiece crackled to life. Target is moving toward exit. All units maintain distance. I followed at a safe distance as Michael left the station and walked 3 blocks to a parking garage. There, a black sedan with tinted windows was waiting. The driver's door opened, and Elena Vasquez stepped out. Right on time, she said as Michael approached. Are you ready to become someone else? Ready as I'll ever be. Get in the back seat. We have a long drive ahead of us, and you have a lot of studying to do. As the sedan pulled out of the parking garage, Detective Santos's voice came through my earpiece again. We have GPS tracking on the vehicle, but we're going to let them get well ahead of us before we follow. David, go home and wait for contact. This is going to be a long operation. The next 18 hours were the longest of my life. No word from Michael, no updates from Detective Santos. Nothing but the terrible silence of not knowing if my son was safe or if he was walking deeper into a trap that would cost him his life. Finally, at 11 a.m. the next morning, Detective Santos called. We've located Michael. He's at a compound in rural Wisconsin, about 2 hours north of Madison. It appears to be some kind of training facility where they prepare people for identity replacement assignments. Is he safe? As far as we can tell, yes. But David, what we're seeing through satellite surveillance is disturbing. This isn't just a few criminals running identity theft scams. This is a sophisticated operation with multiple buildings, security systems, and what appears to be living quarters for dozens of people. You're saying they're holding people prisoner? We're not sure yet. It could be prisoners, or it could be recruits like Michael who are undergoing training. But the scale of this operation is much larger than we anticipated. Over the next 3 days, I received occasional updates. Michael was undergoing intensive training to assume the identity of someone named Jason Walsh, a financial analyst from Milwaukee whose life was about to be stolen. The real Jason Walsh had apparently been kidnapped 3 weeks earlier and was being held somewhere while Michael learned to replace him. The plan is for Michael to return to Milwaukee as Jason Walsh and begin draining his accounts, destroying his credit, and committing financial crimes that Jason will be blamed for, Detective Santos explained during one of our briefings. Meanwhile, the real Jason Walsh will either be killed or permanently relocated where he can never clear his name. How many other people are they doing this to? Based on what we've observed at the Wisconsin compound, we believe they're running at least 20 active identity replacement operations at any given time. David, we're looking at hundreds of victims, maybe thousands over the years this network has been operating. The scope of the evil was staggering. Elena Vasquez and her network weren't just criminals. They were running a system that destroyed people's lives for profit, treating human identities like commodities to be bought and sold. On the 4th day, Michael made contact. The phone call came at 3 a.m., waking me from a restless sleep filled with nightmares about losing both of my sons. "Dad?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Michael! Are you okay? Are you safe?" "I'm okay, but Dad, this is worse than we thought." "Much worse. They're not just stealing identities, they're running something called life harvesting. They find people with valuable lives, good credit, stable jobs, family connections that can be exploited, and they replace them with lookalikes who destroy everything the original person built." "Where are you calling from?" "I managed to get away from the compound for a few minutes. Dad, I've seen the real Jason Walsh. He's alive, but he's broken. They've been torturing him, trying to break his will so he won't fight back when they destroy his life. Michael, you need to get out of there. This is too dangerous. I can't leave yet. Dad, there are at least 30 people being held here, all of them victims who are being replaced by lookalikes. And I've learned something about the broker. He's not just buying identities for criminal use. He's selling them to foreign intelligence services." The implications hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about fraud or theft, this was espionage, national security, treason. "Michael, you have to contact Detective Santos immediately." "I can't. They monitor all communications from the compound." "Dad, I need you to get word to her about what I've learned. Tell her the broker is meeting with clients tomorrow night at a warehouse in Milwaukee. Tell her this is bigger than identity theft. This is about selling American identities to foreign governments." The line went dead, and I was left holding a phone and staring at the ceiling, knowing that my son was trapped in a situation that was spiraling far beyond anything we'd prepared for. I called Detective Santos immediately, waking her up to deliver Michael's intelligence. Within an hour, she was at my house with a team of FBI agents. "David, this case just became a national security matter," she said. "If Michael's information is accurate, we're looking at a network that's been selling American identities to foreign intelligence services for years. That means we have foreign operatives living in the United States under stolen identities, possibly in positions where they can access classified information. What does that mean for Michael? It means the stakes just got much higher. And it means that everyone involved in this network, from Elena Vasquez to the broker to their clients, will kill to protect their operation. Michael is now in more danger than ever, but he's also our best chance of bringing down a threat to national security that we didn't even know existed." The FBI took over the operation from that point, bringing in resources and expertise that the Chicago Police Department couldn't match. But I knew that all the federal agents and surveillance technology in the world couldn't protect Michael from the danger he'd walked into. He was alone in that compound, surrounded by people who had killed to protect their secrets, trying to maintain a cover identity while gathering intelligence that could expose a network of traitors and foreign operatives. And somewhere in that same facility, his twin brother Marcus's killer was probably planning the next phase of an operation that threatened not just our family, but our entire country. The FBI's command center was set up in a nondescript office building in downtown Milwaukee, 47 miles from the compound where Michael was being held. Agent Sarah Chin, no relation to Marcus's adoptive family, briefed me on the scope of the operation they'd uncovered based on Michael's intelligence. "What your son has discovered goes beyond anything we've seen before," she said, pointing to a wall covered with surveillance photos, organizational charts, and maps. "This network has been operating for at least 8 years, and we've identified 43 American identities that have been sold to foreign operatives. Some of these people are working in government positions, defense contractors, even local law enforcement." "How is that possible?" Agent Chin pulled up a file on her laptop. "The beauty of their system is its patience. They don't just steal someone's identity and use it immediately. They spend months, sometimes years, building the stolen identity into something valuable. The lookalike gradually takes over the victim's life, improves their credit, gets them better jobs, builds relationships that can be exploited later." She showed me a photograph of a man in a military uniform. "This is Colonel James Mitchell, currently stationed at Fort Bragg with access to classified defense communications. Except this isn't really Colonel Mitchell. The real Colonel Mitchell disappeared 3 years ago, and this man, a foreign operative, has been living his life ever since." The scope of the betrayal was overwhelming. "How many people like Colonel Mitchell are out there?" "We don't know yet. But Michael's intelligence suggests that tomorrow night's meeting with the broker involves the sale of at least 12 new identities, including someone with access to nuclear facility security protocols." My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Your son is very brave, Mr. Harrison. But bravery won't save him if you interfere with tomorrow's transaction. A friend." Agent Chin was reading over my shoulder. "They know we're watching. David, this complicates everything. If they suspect Michael is working with law enforcement." She didn't need to finish the sentence. I'd already seen what happened to people who threatened this network's operations. "Agent Chin, what's our plan for tomorrow night? We've got teams positioned around the warehouse where the meeting is supposed to take place. But we need Michael to get out of that compound and give us real-time intelligence about the broker's identity and the foreign contacts who are buying these identities. And if Michael can't get out? If he's trapped?" Her expression was grim. "Then we go in with tactical teams and hope we can rescue him before they kill him." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus, about the choice he'd made to protect a brother he'd never really known, and about Michael, who was now in the same position Marcus had been in, knowing the truth about a criminal network and trying to do the right thing despite the deadly consequences. At 2 a.m. my phone rang. "Dad, it's me." Michael's voice was strained, exhausted. "Michael, where are you?" "I'm still at the compound, but I've learned something that changes everything. The broker isn't just some anonymous criminal mastermind. Dad, it's someone we know." "What do you mean?" "The broker is Dr. Rebecca Thorne, Mom's oncologist from 15 years ago. The doctor who treated her cancer before she died." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Dr. Rebecca Thorne had been part of our lives during the darkest period we'd ever experienced, the 8 months when Michael's mother was fighting the cancer that ultimately killed her. She'd been compassionate, professional, someone we trusted completely during the most vulnerable time in our lives. "Michael, are you sure?" "I saw her tonight, Dad. She came to the compound to finalize the arrangements for tomorrow's sale. She looked older, harder, but it's definitely her. And Dad, she recognized me. She knows I'm your son." My blood ran cold. "What did she say?" "She pulled me aside after the briefing. She said she remembered treating my mother, remembered how close our family was. She said it was a shame that another Harrison man was about to die young, just like Rebecca had." The threat was clear. Dr. Thorne wasn't just going to have Michael killed, she was going to make it personal, make it hurt, because she remembered our family and knew exactly how to destroy us. "Michael, you have to get out of there. Tonight." "I can't leave yet, Dad. There are too many innocent people here who will die if this operation isn't stopped. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to research Dr. Thorne's background, Find out how she went from treating cancer patients to selling American identities to foreign governments. I spent the rest of the night digging through online records, medical licensing databases, and news archives, trying to understand how a woman who had once saved lives had become someone who destroyed them. What I found was a story of gradual corruption and devastating personal loss. 5 years after treating my wife, Dr. Thorne had lost her own daughter to cancer, the same type of cancer she'd been unable to cure in Rebecca. The medical malpractice lawsuit that followed had destroyed her career, her reputation, and her financial stability. But the most disturbing discovery came in the form of a news article from 7 years ago. Local doctor reported missing after financial collapse. Dr. Rebecca Thorne had faked her own death to escape crushing debt and criminal investigations into her opioid prescription practices. She'd reinvented herself as the broker, using her medical knowledge and connections to build a network that harvested identities like organs from healthy patients. The woman who had once dedicated her life to healing had become a predator who fed on other people's lives. Agent Chin was fascinated by the information when I brought it to her the next morning. This explains how she was able to build such a sophisticated operation. She had medical databases, patient records, death certificates, everything she needed to identify potential victims and create convincing fake identities. But how did she connect with foreign intelligence services? Medical conferences, international collaborations, refugee resettlement programs. Doctors have access to networks that most criminals could never penetrate. She probably started small, selling individual identities to desperate people, and gradually built relationships with more dangerous clients. The day of the warehouse meeting dragged by like torture. Michael had managed to send one more brief message. Meeting confirmed for 9 p.m. At least 6 foreign operatives attending. Dr. Thorne planning something special for the Harrison family. As evening approached, Agent Chen's team moved into position around the warehouse. I was stationed in a surveillance van 6 blocks away, close enough to monitor communications but far enough to stay out of danger if things went wrong. At 8:47 p.m., vehicles began arriving at the warehouse. Black sedans with tinted windows, a white panel van, and finally, a silver Mercedes that Agent Chen identified as Dr. Thorne's vehicle. All units in position, came the voice through our communications system. Target vehicles have arrived. Awaiting confirmation of subjects entering the building. At 9:03 p.m., Michael's voice crackled through the radio. Overwatch, this is Asset. I'm inside the warehouse with approximately 15 subjects, including primary target. Transaction is beginning. Through our surveillance equipment, we could hear fragments of conversation from inside the building. Dr. Thorne's voice, older and harder than I remembered, was discussing prices and delivery schedules for stolen identities like she was running a medical supply business. The nuclear technician package includes complete security clearance documentation and 3 months of behavioral training, she was saying. The investment is substantial, but the access you'll gain to critical infrastructure is invaluable. Agent Chin was coordinating with tactical teams, preparing to move in when they had enough evidence to prosecute everyone involved. But something was wrong. Michael's voice hadn't come through the radio in over 10 minutes, and the warehouse had gone suspiciously quiet. Overwatch, do you have visual on Asset? Agent Chen asked. Negative. Lost sight of Asset approximately 8 minutes ago. My heart started pounding. Agent Chen, something's wrong. Michael should have checked in by now. Before she could respond, her radio crackled to life with a voice I recognized. Dr. Rebecca Thorne. Agent Chin, this is Dr. Rebecca Thorne. I believe you're looking for someone. Dr. Thorne, this is the FBI. You're surrounded. Come out of the building with your hands visible. I don't think so, Agent Chin. You see, I have something you want, and you have something I want. David Harrison is listening to this conversation, isn't he? I remember David from 15 years ago. Such a devoted husband, so desperate to save his dying wife. Now he's just as desperate to save his dying son. What do you want? Agent Chen asked. I want safe passage out of the country for myself and my clients. In exchange, I'll give you back Michael Harrison. Alive. The negotiation continued for nearly an hour, but I could see that Dr. Thorne was stalling for time while her people escaped through routes we hadn't covered. Finally, Agent Chen ordered the tactical teams to move in. What they found in the warehouse was a nightmare that still haunts me today. Michael was there, alive but barely conscious, strapped to a medical table with 4 lines running into his arms. Dr. Thorne had been drugging him with the same medication she'd once used to treat cancer patients, slowly poisoning him while keeping him awake enough to suffer. But the real horror was what they found in the warehouse's back rooms, evidence of dozens of identity harvesting operations, including photographs and personal information for people who had been processed by Dr. Thorne's network. Men and women who had simply disappeared from their lives, leaving behind lookalikes who destroyed everything they had built. Dr. Thorne herself was gone, along with most of her foreign clients. They'd escaped through a tunnel system that connected the warehouse to a nearby sewer network. But we'd recovered enough evidence to begin dismantling the entire operation and identifying victims who had been missing for years. Michael recovered from the drugging, but the psychological impact of what he'd experienced in that compound would take much longer to heal. He'd seen things, learned things about human cruelty and betrayal that changed him in ways I'm still trying to understand. But he'd also done something extraordinary. His courage and sacrifice had exposed a network that threatened national security and had destroyed hundreds of lives. The intelligence he'd gathered would lead to arrests across the country and help us identify foreign operatives who had been living among us for years. As I sat beside Michael's hospital bed, watching him sleep off the effects of Dr. Thorne's drugs, I thought about Marcus and the sacrifice he'd made to protect a brother he'd never known. Both of my sons had faced evil and chosen to fight it, even though the cost was almost everything they had. The network was broken, the immediate threat was over, but Dr. Rebecca Thorne was still out there somewhere, probably building a new operation, finding new victims, spreading her particular brand of evil to other families. Our story wasn't over yet. It was just entering its final, most dangerous phase. 6 months after the warehouse raid, I was sitting in a federal courtroom in Chicago, listening to testimony about crimes that had destroyed hundreds of lives over nearly a decade. Elena Vasquez had been captured 3 weeks after the raid, found hiding in a safe house in Detroit with fake documentation that would have gotten her across the Canadian border. Jimmy Kim, the document forger, had plea bargained his way into a reduced sentence in exchange for detailed information about the network's operations. But Dr. Rebecca Thorne remained a ghost, disappeared into whatever shadow world harbored people who traded in human misery. The trial was revealing the full scope of what Sarah and her associates had built. Prosecutors presented evidence of 127 confirmed identity theft cases, 43 people who had simply vanished from their lives, and at least 12 foreign operatives who had been living under stolen American identities while working in sensitive positions. Michael was the prosecution's star witness, and I watched him testify about his experiences in that Wisconsin compound with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. He described the psychological torture methods used to break victims' resistance, the systematic way innocent people were transformed into criminals who destroyed their own lives, and the cold calculation that treated human beings like inventory to be processed and sold. The victim would be kept isolated for weeks, Michael testified, forced to watch recordings of their look-alike gradually taking over their life. They'd see their replacement at their job, with their family, spending their money, destroying their relationships. By the time they were released to take the blame for crimes they didn't commit, many of them were psychologically shattered. Elena Vasquez sat at the defendant's table, showing no emotion as the details of her crimes were laid out for the jury. But when Michael described finding Marcus's personal belongings in her office at the compound, items that proved she'd been planning his recruitment for months before Sarah ever made contact, I saw something flicker across her face. Not remorse, but annoyance that her careful planning had been exposed. The testimony about Marcus was the hardest part for both Michael and me to endure. Agent Chen presented evidence that Marcus had been under surveillance for over a year before Sarah approached him, that Elena's people had been monitoring his gambling debts, his job performance, his relationships, waiting for the right moment to exploit his vulnerabilities. Marcus Chen was not a criminal, the prosecutor stated during closing arguments. He was a victim who was systematically manipulated and ultimately murdered when he refused to participate in the destruction of his own family. When the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all counts for Elena Vasquez and Jimmy Kim, I felt a sense of justice that I hadn't experienced since the night Sarah died. But it was incomplete justice, because the person ultimately responsible for everything that had happened to our family was still free. After the sentencing hearing, Elena got life without parole, Jimmy got 25 years. Michael and I walked out of the federal building into a Chicago afternoon that felt different somehow. Cleaner. Like a weight we'd been carrying for almost a year had finally been lifted. "Dad," Michael said as we stood on the courthouse steps, "I need to tell you something." "What is it, son?" "I've been in contact with someone. Someone who says they have information about Dr. Thorne's whereabouts." My blood ran cold. "Michael," we agreed. "The FBI is handling the search for her. You're not getting involved in any more dangerous operations." "This is different, Dad. The person who contacted me isn't law enforcement. It's someone from Dr. Thorne's past, someone who has their own reasons for wanting her found." He handed me a letter, handwritten on expensive stationery, postmarked from Seattle 3 days earlier. "Dear Mr. Harrison, my name is Jennifer Thorne. Rebecca Thorne was my mother. I know what she became, what she did to your family and to hundreds of others. I've been tracking her movements for the past 2 years, trying to find a way to stop her before she destroys more lives. She's in Vancouver now, building a new network, recruiting new victims. The Canadian authorities don't know who she really is. She's operating under the identity of a woman named Dr. Catherine Morris, a pediatric oncologist who died in a car accident 5 years ago. I can't go to the police with this information because my mother still has connections who would warn her if law enforcement got involved. But I can help you find her, if you're willing to take the risk. My mother destroyed my family long before she started destroying other people's families. My sister died of cancer when she was 12, and instead of grieving like a normal person, our mother became obsessed with cheating death, with taking lives from other people to replace what she'd lost. I know you have every reason not to trust anyone connected to her, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to help end this. She's my mother, but she's also a monster, and I'm the only one who knows her well enough to predict her next moves. If you're interested, meet me at Pike Place Market in Seattle this Saturday at noon. I'll be wearing a red scarf and carrying a copy of the Seattle Times. Whether you come or not, please know that I'm sorry for what my mother did to your family. Marcus didn't deserve to die, and neither did any of her other victims. Sincerely, Jennifer Thorne. I read the letter twice, my hands shaking. Michael, this could be a trap. Dr. Thorne could be using her own daughter to lure us into another one of her schemes. I thought about that, Dad. But I've been researching Jennifer Thorne online. She's legitimate. She's a social worker in Seattle. She runs a nonprofit that helps families dealing with childhood cancer. And look at this. He showed me his phone, displaying a news article from the Seattle Times dated 3 years earlier. Local social worker leads campaign for missing persons database. The article featured a photograph of a woman in her early 30s who bore a strong resemblance to the Dr. Thorne I remembered, but with kind eyes instead of calculating ones. According to this article, Jennifer Thorne has been advocating for better tracking of missing persons cases, specifically cases involving identity theft. Michael continued. Dad, I think she's been trying to fight her mother's crimes from the inside. And you want to meet with her? I want to finish what Marcus started. My brother died because he chose family over greed, chose love over money. If Jennifer Thorne is offering us a chance to bring her mother to justice, don't we owe it to Marcus to take that chance? I looked at my son, at the man who had risked everything to expose a network of criminals who had nearly destroyed our family, and I saw both Michael and Marcus in his face. The determination, the willingness to sacrifice for others, the refusal to let evil go unpunished. If we do this, I said, we do it smart. We contact Agent Chen, we bring in law enforcement support, and we don't take any unnecessary risks. Agreed. But Dad, we do it For Marcus, for all the people Dr. Thorne is going to hurt if she's allowed to start over in Canada. 3 days later, Michael and I were on a plane to Seattle, carrying with us the hope that we might finally be able to bring Dr. Rebecca Thorne to justice. Agent Chen had initially opposed our involvement, but when we explained that Jennifer Thorne would only work with us directly, she agreed to provide surveillance support. Pike Place Market was crowded with tourists and locals, the perfect place for a clandestine meeting. We found Jennifer Thorne exactly where she'd said she'd be, wearing a red scarf and reading the Seattle Times at a small table outside a coffee shop overlooking Elliott Bay. She looked up as we approached, and I could see Dr. Thorne's features in her face, but softened by compassion and marked by the kind of pain that comes from loving someone who has become a monster. "Mr. Harrison, Michael," she said, standing to shake our hands. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be difficult for you. Jennifer, before we go any further, I need to know why you're doing this," I said. "Why are you helping us track down your own mother?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the water. "Because she's not my mother anymore. The woman who raised me, who taught me to care about other people, who became a doctor because she wanted to heal, that woman died when my sister did. What's left is something else, something that feeds on other people's pain." She pulled out a manila folder and spread its contents across the table. Photographs, documents, surveillance notes, evidence of Dr. Thorne's activities in Vancouver. "She's building something bigger than what she had in the States," Jennifer continued. "She's not just stealing identities anymore, she's creating them from scratch. Finding homeless people, runaways, people no one will miss, and giving them new identities that she sells to the highest bidder." Michael studied the photographs. "How long has she been doing this?" "At least 6 months. But the operation is expanding rapidly. She's recruited local criminals, corrupt officials, even some people from the medical community who don't know who she really is." "And you've been watching her this whole time?" Jennifer nodded. "I moved to Seattle 2 years ago specifically to track her down. I knew she was too smart to stay in the United States after the warehouse raid, and I knew she'd eventually surface somewhere with a large immigrant population where new identities wouldn't be questioned." She handed me a recent photograph of Dr. Thorne entering a medical clinic in downtown Vancouver. She looked different, younger somehow, with professionally styled hair and expensive clothes, but the cold calculation in her eyes was unmistakable. "She's calling herself Dr. Catherine Morris now, and she's working at a clinic that treats refugees and asylum seekers. It's the perfect cover for her operation. She has access to people who are desperate for new identities, and she can provide them while simultaneously recruiting them into her criminal network." "Jennifer, what's your plan?" I asked. "I've been building a relationship with her, pretending to be a social worker who can help identify potential recruits. She doesn't know I'm aware of her real activities, but she trusts me enough to let me into her inner circle." "And you want us to help you gather evidence that can be used to arrest her?" "More than that. I want to arrange a meeting where we can confront her with everything she's done, give her a chance to turn herself in voluntarily before law enforcement moves in." Michael leaned forward. "Why would she agree to turn herself in?" Jennifer's expression was grim. "Because I'm going to tell her that if she doesn't, I'll expose her operation to her Canadian contacts. The foreign governments and criminal organizations that are buying identities from her don't tolerate failure or exposure. If they learn that she's compromised, they'll kill her." It was a dangerous plan, but it was also the only chance we had of bringing Dr. Thorne to justice before she disappeared again. Over the next hour, Jennifer outlined the details: a meeting at the clinic after hours, with FBI agents positioned outside to move in once we had recorded evidence of her admitting to her crimes. "There's one more thing you need to know," Jennifer said as we prepared to leave. "My mother has been asking about your family, Mr. Harrison. She knows that Michael survived the compound, knows that you've been working with law enforcement. She sees your family as unfinished business." The threat was clear. Dr. Thorne wasn't just building a new criminal network. She was planning revenge against the people who had exposed her old one. "Let her come," I said. "I've already lost one son to her evil." I'm not going to spend the rest of my life running from someone who profits from other people's misery. 3 days later, we were in Vancouver, preparing for a confrontation that would either bring Dr. Rebecca Thorne to justice or cost us everything we had left. But I was no longer the scared, grief-stricken father who had received that phone call at 3:47 a.m. almost a year earlier. I was a man who had learned that evil only wins when good people are too afraid to fight back. And I was done being afraid. The final confrontation with Dr. Rebecca Thorne took place on a rainy Thursday evening in a medical clinic in downtown Vancouver. Jennifer had arranged for the building to be empty except for the 4 of us, herself, Dr. Thorne, Michael, and me. FBI agent Chun and her team were positioned outside, listening through surveillance equipment, and ready to move in at the first sign of danger. Dr. Thorne was waiting for us in her office, sitting behind a desk covered with medical journals and patient files that were probably all fake. She looked up as we entered, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the compassionate doctor who had treated my wife 15 years earlier. But then her expression hardened, and I was looking at the woman who had orchestrated Marcus's death and nearly destroyed Michael's life. "David Harrison," she said, her voice calm and professional. "You look older. Grief will do that to a man. Dr. Thorne. Or should I say Dr. Morris? It's hard to keep track of which identity you're using these days." She smiled, but it was the cold expression I remembered from the warehouse recordings. "Identity is fluid, David. I learned that from your family, actually. You gave away one son and kept the other, as if you could simply choose which version of your life you wanted to live. I made a mistake 33 years ago," I said. "But you turned that mistake into a weapon. You used my son's grief, his desperation, his gambling debts to turn him into a criminal. And when he tried to do the right thing, you had him killed. Marcus made his own choices. He could have lived comfortably if he'd simply followed through on our agreement. Instead, he chose sentimentality over survival." Michael stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "He chose family over money. He chose love over greed. Concepts you apparently can't understand." Dr. Thorne turned her attention to Michael, studying him with the same clinical detachment she'd once used to examine cancer patients. "Michael Harrison. The son who survived. Do you know how close you came to dying in that compound? How easy it would have been for me to simply let the drugs do their work. Why didn't you? Because death would have been too easy for you. I wanted you to live with the knowledge that you'd failed to save your brother, that your father's secrets had destroyed your family. I wanted you to spend the rest of your life knowing that everything bad that happened was ultimately your fault." Jennifer stepped forward then, her voice shaking with emotion. "Mom, stop. Please stop." Dr. Thorne's expression softened slightly as she looked at her daughter. "Jennifer. My dear, naive Jennifer. You always were too compassionate for your own good. I was compassionate because you taught me to be. You taught me that helping people was the most important thing a person could do. When did you forget that?" "I forgot it when the people I helped the most were taken away from me," Dr. Thorne replied. "When your sister died despite everything I did to save her. When David's wife died despite my best efforts. When I realized that the universe doesn't reward goodness, it punishes it. So you decided to become part of the punishment. I decided to take what I needed instead of waiting for life to give it to me. Money, power, control over other people's destinies, these things don't depend on the arbitrary cruelty of disease or fate." I found my voice again. "Dr. Thorne, it's over. The FBI knows where you are, knows what you've been doing. You can end this now, turn yourself in, and maybe find some small measure of redemption." She laughed, a sound that was more chilling than anything else she'd said. "Redemption? David, I passed the point of redemption years ago. But you're right about one thing, this is over. My work here is finished." That's when I noticed the small device in her hand, something that looked like a medical alert button. She pressed it, and immediately, alarms started going off throughout the building. "Mom, what did you do?" Jennifer asked, panic in her voice. "I activated the building's emergency lockdown system. The doors are sealed, the windows are reinforced, and we have approximately 30 minutes before the incendiary devices I've placed throughout this building turn it into a crematorium. Agent Chen's voice crackled through my earpiece. David, we're locked out. The building's gone into some kind of security mode. We're working on getting inside, but you need to find another way out. Dr. Thorne was still smiling her cold smile. You wanted justice, David. You wanted me to pay for what I did to your family. Well, now we all pay together. Your son, my daughter, and the 2 men who destroyed everything I built. But Jennifer was already moving, heading for a door marked emergency exit at the back of the office. This way. There's a fire escape that connects to the building next door. As we followed her through the maze of corridors, smoke was beginning to seep through the walls, and the smell of burning chemicals filled the air. Dr. Thorne had planned this as her final act of revenge, to kill us all and disappear in the flames, leaving no evidence of her crimes and no witnesses to her identity. We reached the fire escape just as the first explosion rocked the building. Jennifer was working frantically to unlock the security door, while Michael and I tried to break the reinforced window that led to the neighboring building. It's not working, Michael said, his voice tight with panic. The glass is too thick. That's when Dr. Thorne appeared behind us, moving slowly down the corridor, seemingly unconcerned about the flames that were growing stronger by the minute. There's no escape, David. I designed this building's security system myself. The only way out is through me. She was holding something in her hand, a key card that would unlock the emergency door. But her face showed no intention of using it to save any of us. Dr. Thorne, your daughter is here, I said, desperately trying to appeal to whatever humanity might still exist in her. Are you really going to let Jennifer die for your revenge? Jennifer chose her side when she brought you here. She chose your family over mine. Mom, please, Jennifer pleaded. We can all walk away from this. We can start over. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in Dr. Thorne's eyes, some remnant of the mother who had once loved her daughters, who had become a doctor to help people, who had grieved genuinely when her patients died. But then the building shook with another explosion, closer this time, and whatever humanity had been there disappeared. Some things can't be started over, she said. Some mistakes can't be undone. Some people can't be forgiven. She threw the key card into the flames behind her, sealing our fate along with hers. That's when Michael did something that probably saved all of our lives. He tackled Dr. Thorne, not trying to hurt her, but trying to reach the medical bag she carried, the bag where she kept the drugs she'd used to torture him in the compound. Dad, help me! He shouted, struggling with a woman who was stronger and more desperate than she appeared. Together, we managed to get the bag away from her, and inside, Michael found what he was looking for, a vial of the same sedative she'd used on him months earlier. I'm sorry, he said to Dr. Thorne as he injected her with her own drug. But we're not all going to die for your revenge. As the sedative took effect, Dr. Thorne slumped against the wall, her eyes still burning with hatred but her body no longer able to act on it. Jennifer found an emergency axe and managed to break through the reinforced window just as the third explosion sent flames racing down the corridor toward us. We carried Dr. Thorne's unconscious form through the opening and onto the fire escape of the adjacent building, reaching safety just as her clinic became an inferno. Agent Chen and her team were waiting for us, along with Vancouver police and fire departments. As paramedics checked us for smoke inhalation and burns, I watched firefighters battle the blaze that Dr. Thorne had intended as our funeral pyre. Is it over? Michael asked as we sat in the back of an ambulance, breathing oxygen through masks. I looked at Dr. Rebecca Thorne, handcuffed to a gurney and still unconscious from the sedatives, finally in custody after nearly a year of pursuit. Yes, son. It's over. But as I said the words, I realized they weren't entirely true. The criminal network was destroyed, the immediate threat was ended, but the healing would take much longer. Michael would need time to recover from the trauma of what he'd experienced. I would need time to process the guilt of 33-year-old decisions that had made our family vulnerable to someone like Sarah. And both of us would need to learn how to honor Marcus's memory while building a future that included the brother we'd never had the chance to know. 3 months later, I was standing in Graceland Cemetery in Chicago, at the gravesite where Marcus James Harrison, was finally buried next to his mother Rebecca. The headstone read simply, Marcus James Harrison, 1991 to 2024. Beloved son and brother. He chose family. Michael stood beside me, along with Jennifer Thorne, who had become an unexpected ally in our efforts to help other victims of her mother's network. Dr. Rebecca Thorne herself was serving multiple life sentences in a federal penitentiary, her appeals exhausted, her criminal empire dismantled. Do you think he knew? Michael asked, looking down at Marcus's grave. At the end, do you think he knew he was saving his twin brother? I think he knew he was saving family, I replied. And that was enough. As we walked away from the cemetery, I reflected on everything that had brought us to this moment. A phone call at 3:47 a.m. that had shattered our world. A conspiracy that had nearly destroyed our family. 2 sons who had chosen love over fear, courage over safety, family over everything else. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, if you've watched from wherever you are in this world, I want you to know that evil is real, and it's closer than you think. But love is real too, and it's stronger than any scheme or conspiracy or network of criminals. Family isn't just about blood or genetics or who raised you. It's about the choices you make when everything is on the line. It's about the people you're willing to sacrifice for, even if you've never met them. It's about standing up to monsters, even when you're scared, even when the odds are against you. My son Marcus chose family, and it cost him his life. My son Michael chose family, and it saved us all. I chose secrecy and fear 33 years ago, and it nearly destroyed everyone I loved. But when the final test came, when everything was at stake, we chose each other. And in the end, that's what defeated Dr. Rebecca Thorne and her network of evil. Not FBI agents or tactical teams or surveillance technology, but the simple truth that some bonds are stronger than greed, some loves are deeper than hatred, and some families are worth dying for. If this story has touched you, if it's made you think about your own family, your own secrets, your own choices, please share it. Let people know that the darkness is real, but the light is stronger. Let them know that in a world full of people who see others as opportunities to exploit, there are still people willing to fight for what's right. And remember, family isn't just who you're born to. It's who you choose to stand with when the world tries to tear you down. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for caring about Marcus, and Michael, and all the victims whose names we'll never know. Thank you for believing that justice is possible, even when it seems impossible. From my family to yours, wherever you're watching this from around the world, never forget that love wins. It doesn't always win easily, and it doesn't always win quickly, but if you're willing to fight for it, if you're willing to sacrifice for it,